Right now, the shutdown, it still continues, but a possible first step towards a potential compromise late today. The question is, can they figure this all out before the big deadline come October 17th? Well, tonight, we hear from Congressman Leonard, New Jersey Republican, about how the negotiations are going on Capitol Hill. And later, we'll bring you a special, The New Nazis. We bring you a spine-chilling journey from Eastern Europe and Latvia all the way to D.C. and beyond. During our special report, we will pull back the curtain on Europe's festering problem, the return of Nazism. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French, and thank you so much for joining us this Thursday evening, October 10th. Financial markets, they soared today on the first sign of optimistic news out of Washington in more than a month. Now, with just 7 days before the U.S. reaches its debt limit, Republican leaders in the House, they have presented a plan to extend the debt limit for 6 weeks. Now, the plan would not end the government shutdown, but it would put off, not solve, but put off the threat of default till December. Now, this would allow time for negotiations on a broader budget deal.
It's time for leadership. It's time for these negotiations and this conversation to begin. And I would hope that the president will look at this as an opportunity and a good faith effort on our part to move halfway to what he's demanded in order to have these conversations begin.
Now, the White House, and we understand a lot of Democrats and even House, Senate Republicans, we're getting reports, are not happy with this plan because all it does is not include the reopening of government, but, as I said, just push this back 6 weeks. Still indicated that the short-term deal might be acceptable. The White House may take this, if nothing else, to avoid what many people could say is cataclysmic come at the end of this month. And for more on this, I want to bring in our guest. Out of our nation's capital, we are pleased to be joined by Congressman Leonard, Republican from New Jersey. Congressman, thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
You know, it was interesting. Right before we came on the air, I saw one of your colleagues, Republican Congressman Yoho, who, when asked about the debt limit deal, he said, you know what, I actually think the world markets would be stronger if, in effect, we went over the debt limit cliff and we defaulted. He debated about the language surrounding it. And he said he doesn't know if he would even approve a 6-week basic moratorium to push this thing back. The indication also was a lot of other people may be with him. What are you hearing? Even this 6-week stopgap, which many people don't like, do you think this could even get through the Republican caucus?
I hope that it does, and I do not favor defaulting on our debt. I think that that would be extremely poor public policy. We have to pay our bills. We have to pay all our bills, and we have to pay all of our bills on time. This is a proposal that John Boehner, the Speaker of the House, has suggested to President Obama. And I hope that this is the beginning of the end, not only regarding the debt ceiling issue, but also regarding funding of government. I know that this suggestion does not relate directly to funding of government, but I hope government can open up as quickly as possible.
Can you explain to us, here's the confusion I think many Americans have. You read the polls, and I know you identify yourself as a mainstream lawmaker, and your record suggests that. To the majority of people, they say timeout. Every poll says the public doesn't like the way this thing is being conducted. You've heard now from the financial markets. You've heard from leaders in industry. They don't like this. Every metric shows, I mean, political leaders from even the calculators like the Karl Roves of the world here to other leaders in the Republican Party, including colleagues of your own in the House like Peter King and others, say, what are we doing here? Forget about bad politics. This is bad for this country. Can you explain how 60, 90, whatever the threshold of the total Tea Party population is, can hold everything hostage? Why can't Republicans just bring this up for a clean vote and everybody vote their conscience on the shutdown as well as the debt limit?
The last proposal that we have made is a continuing resolution that would fund government, and it does two additional things. Number one, it says the individual mandate should be postponed for a year regarding Obamacare, because after all, the administration has given big business a year's reprieve. And we think that this should apply to individual Americans as well. And then it also requires those who serve on Capitol Hill, members of Congress, to abide by the law regarding the exchanges. I don't consider either of those proposals to be outside the mainstream. That doesn't mean necessarily that the president has to agree with them, but certainly the president should come to the negotiating table. And I think today's process is, in effect, the fact that the president is coming to the negotiating table.
Congressman, due respect, I will give you 100-to-1 odds on whatever bet you want to make. There will be no more delay on the individual mandate. You know that, and I know that. The thing was voted on. The House got to vote on it. The Senate got to vote on it. Then went to conference committee, got passed. We even had an election last year on this. The Supreme Court affirmed it. We know, you know this. It is not going to be delayed another year. All that said, look at what's happening in the meantime. We're losing $2 billion every single week here this goes on. We're playing fire with the financial markets. And I know you want to reopen government, and I know that you want to not play around with the debt limit. My question is just a clean vote. Let's just have a clean vote here. If they want to vote no, fine. But you and others who I think down deep, some on the record have already said that they'd vote yes to a clean resolution here. Why not at least just put it up for a vote and let everybody vote their conscience? Clean and simple.
Whether or not there would be a vote is the decision to be made by John Boehner, the Speaker of the House. I have said that I favor a continuing resolution that would include simply repeal of the medical device tax, and that is a proposal that has wide bipartisan support. It's being sponsored by Ron Kind, a Democrat from Wisconsin, and Charlie Dent, a Republican from Pennsylvania, and there is support growing for that in the United States Senate. Regarding the debt ceiling issue, I agree with you completely. Under no circumstances should we ever default on our debt. This involves not only principal and interest regarding Treasury bonds, but also those who contract with the federal government. We shouldn't default on any aspects of our debt.
And you know what, Congressman, I think maybe there's some good argument on the medical device tax, but the bigger question is, would your caucus vote for it? And I ask this because what we have seen, I got an 11-year-old who she's going through basically learning how the different branches of government work and how a bill becomes a law and everything else. She watches the news in the morning, and while she can't put it into these words, she's basically learning a lesson of the tyranny of the minority. What's the point of budgets? What's the point of actually agreeing to things about having elections if 40, 60, 90 people can hold everything hostage? And I wonder if some of those same people, and I don't count you among them, would understand, what if there was a Republican president? And what if the Democratic chamber in the House basically said, you know what, we're going to go over the debt limit. We're going to shut down the government if you don't impose gun control regulations that we see fit. Do you imagine the language we would hear on the equivalents of the Fox Newses across? They'd probably call for impeachment proceedings. My point is, this is bad for America. This isn't about Republican, Democrat. I think you see that, but are you surprised by how many other people in Congress don't understand that as well?
I believe that the overwhelming majority of members of Congress on both sides of the aisle are in agreement that we should not default on our debt, and that is why John Boehner is making the proposal he is making to the President of the United States. And although we don't know yet, I hope that we can have in law sometime this weekend making sure that we do not default on our debt. Regarding the medical device issue, 79 United States senators have voted in a non-binding vote several weeks ago in opposition to the medical device tax. I don't think we should be taxing medical devices in this country. They may include pacemakers, for example, and so there's wide bipartisan support for that. I do not view that as some sort of tyranny by the minority. I
don't
think
either.
that has
No, I don't
wide
either.
support.
I don't either, Congressman. And if I thought that it was you that was driving this ship here, I'd feel a lot more comfortable. My question is, let's say the president capitulates and says, okay, I'll push this thing back 6 weeks with no even promise of reopening the government. What reasoned logic can you give us that anything will change in the next 6 weeks? Like I said, I've heard tonight from your colleagues, Republicans in the House, Barton, I heard from Yoho, I even heard in the Senate here from the Rand Pauls and the Ted Cruzes, not so much. They are basically holding firm to their position, and their definition of negotiation is, give me what I want and I'll then agree. Why should anything change in a month and a half?
I would suggest that all of those who are interested in this topic read a wonderful op-ed piece by my friend and colleague Paul Ryan that was published in the Wall Street Journal yesterday. And I think Paul Ryan gives us a roadmap as to how we might negotiate over the course of the next 6 weeks. And he has been deeply involved in budget matters. And the proposal that Speaker Boehner is presenting to the President includes going to conference regarding a budget for the United States. And I think that these are positive developments, and I encourage all who hope, as I do, that we can make progress over the next 6 weeks to read Paul Ryan's op-ed in yesterday's Journal.
The problem is, again, the President and the White House have already made it clear that issue's been debated, and they will not in any way abide by the Ryan proposal. They've rejected it out of hand. Listen, I hope your optimism is founded. I hope that we're in a better place here. I hope that some in your party will agree to a 6-week extension if that's the best that we can do. And I think that's an indictment on this. But God forbid, 6 weeks from now, we're still having these same conversations, if in fact that's the deal. Let's fingers crossed that it won't. Congressman, I wish you the best of luck. Like I say to your colleagues, everybody in D.C. is going to need it. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. All right. I want to bring Andrew in for a second here, and then we're going to be on the other side of the break. Going to be speaking to a lawmaker a journalist on Capitol Hill, telling us what's going on behind the scenes. Maybe I've got the fog after doing this now for the last month, but reading between the lines, I think down deep, he and others have had it, but I don't know if it's enough to just cross fingers and hope that 6 weeks will cool the fever. Somebody has to stand up publicly within the Republican circles. Democrats can't do it, and tell the Tea Party stand down.
And you would hope it would be a guy like Leonard Lance, who considers himself to be a middle-of-the-road guy, who feels like he's being pressured from the Tea Party, but
won't say it.
Won't say it, and I don't think behind closed doors is necessarily applying the pressure. John Boehner certainly isn't doing it. The question is, when is a sane, and let me take some of the heat off that. When is a moderate, focused on getting the business of government done Republican going to stand up and take on this group that is derailing their message and derailing the government?
And I swear, people, if this was a Democrat led faction that was shutting down the government and playing with fire with the debt limit because they didn't get what they want, I'd say it just as loud. Every math, every economist, every person in the financial markets, I'm talking about CEOs of the largest financial institutions in this country. Right now, there's movements. Think about this. The Koch brothers have separated themselves now from the Tea Party. Just do the math on that one. And finally, there are business groups, lobbying groups, that are thinking of challenging Tea Party candidates in their districts in primaries because they see just how wackadoo this thing has gotten. All right. We want you to, as always, be part of our conversation here. Go to Facebook and Twitter and sound off. Are you worried about the debt limit default? We told you about the latest news, but there's been many hopeful signs here that have gone by the wayside. All right, when we come back, we'll stay in Washington and head over to our Capitol Hill reporter who's going to give us the inside scoop on what's really going on there. That and more after this.